The ancient monitoring stations scattered across the Outer Rim had been silent for centuries. Most of the Keth Mori coalition had forgotten they even existed. These old machines floated in the dark space between stars, watching for threats that never came. The 7 alien races of the coalition lived peaceful lives on their beautiful worlds, creating art and studying the stars. Commander Veltar swam through the crystal-clear waters of his command center on Nereid Prime. His blue skin shimmered as he moved past floating displays showing routine data from across Coalition space. The aquatic Nereid species had always been the Coalition's watchers, their keen minds perfect for spotting patterns others might miss. But today, something was different. A sharp alarm cut through the gentle sounds of his underwater office. Veltar's large eyes widened as he saw the readings flooding in from Monitor Station 7, positioned at the very edge of known space. The numbers made no sense. Energy signatures unlike anything in their databases were approaching from the dark void between galaxies. Impossible, Veltar whispered, his voice creating bubbles that rose to the surface. He called up historical records going back 3,000 years. Nothing like this had ever been detected. The Coalition had always believed they were alone in this part of the galaxy, safe from any major threats. More alarms began sounding as additional monitoring stations came online. Whatever was coming was massive, not just one ship, but hundreds of enormous objects moving in perfect formation. Their energy output was off the charts, each one the size of a small moon. Veltar immediately contacted the Coalition Council on Sanctuary Prime, the capital world where all 7 species worked together in harmony. The council chamber was a beautiful dome of living crystal that housed representatives from each race. There were the tall, graceful Elani with their silver skin and flowing robes. The small, fur-covered Mokari scurried about on important business. The rocky-skinned Thek stood like ancient statues, thinking deeply before speaking. The plant-like Verdani swayed gently in their special atmosphere suits. The energy beings called Lumine flickered in and out of visibility. And the insect-like Zephyri buzzed quietly in the corners. Honored Council, Veltar's image appeared in the center of the chamber through their communication system. We have detected unknown objects approaching our territory. Their size and power levels are beyond anything in our records. Council Speaker Thane, an elderly Elani with kind eyes, leaned forward. Could they be natural phenomena? Perhaps some kind of cosmic event we have not seen before. No, Speaker, Veltar replied, his voice tight with worry. These objects are moving with purpose. They are heading directly toward our outer colonies. And they are slowing down as they approach inhabited systems. The council chamber fell silent. For 3,000 years, the Coalition had known only peace. Their small defense fleets were designed for rescue operations and keeping space lanes clear of asteroids. They had never faced a real military threat. War was something they read about in ancient history books, a primitive behavior their ancestors had left behind long ago. Over the next few hours, the situation became worse. The mysterious objects, which Veltar had started calling the Devourers because of how they seemed to consume everything in their path, reached the first outer colony. Kepler's Garden was a beautiful agricultural world where the Verdani grew exotic plants for the entire Coalition. The attack, if it could be called that, was unlike anything anyone could have imagined. The Devourer construct simply surrounded the planet and began breaking it apart, piece by piece. They used some kind of energy beam to tear chunks of rock and metal from the surface, drawing the material into their massive hulls. Within 6 hours, Kepler's Garden was gone, consumed completely. The Coalition's emergency response fleet rushed to help, but they arrived too late. Captain Zara of the Elani Defense Corps could only watch in horror as the Devourers moved on to the next system. When her ships tried to communicate with the mechanical giants, there was no response. When they fired their small defensive weapons, the energy simply disappeared into the construct's hulls without effect. They are not ships, Captain Zara reported back to the Council. They are machines. Massive, hungry machines that eat everything. Planets, asteroids, even the light from stars seems dimmer after they pass. Panic began spreading through Coalition space as more worlds went dark. The Devourers moved with terrible efficiency, consuming 3 more colonies before the Coalition could even organize a proper response. Each attack followed the same pattern: surround, consume, move on. No survivors, no wreckage, nothing left behind but empty space. Veltar worked day and night, trying to find some weakness in the enemy's approach. But their technology was far beyond anything the Coalition had ever seen. These were not just alien ships, they were something else entirely. Something that had traveled across the dark void between galaxies for a purpose none of them could understand. As reports came in of more worlds falling to the mechanical plague, one terrible fact became clear. The Devourers were not interested in conquest or communication. They wanted only to consume, to turn every planet and star in coalition space into more of themselves. The galaxy's most peaceful civilization was about to face its greatest test, and they had no idea how to fight back against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. The refugee ships filled the space around Sanctuary Prime like a swarm of metal insects. Billions of coalition citizens had fled their homes as the Devourers consumed world after world. The massive passenger vessels, cargo haulers, and even small personal craft carried families who had lost everything. Children pressed their faces against windows, looking back at the empty darkness where their home planets used to shine. Commander Veltar floated in his emergency command center, watching the chaos unfold on dozens of screens. His normally calm aquatic features showed deep worry lines. In just 3 weeks, the coalition had lost 12 worlds. The Devourers moved like a disease through space, each consumed planet making them stronger and faster. "We cannot feed all these people much longer," reported Supply Master Keth, a small Mokari whose fur had turned gray from stress. "Our food stores are running low, and the medical ships are overcrowded. Some families have been sleeping in cargo holds for days." On the main viewing screen, another refugee fleet arrived from the Zephyri home system. The insect-like aliens had been among the last to evacuate, staying behind to save their ancient libraries. Now their ships carried not just people, but thousands of data crystals containing the knowledge of their entire civilization. Young Lieutenant Nera of the Ilani watched the ships with tears in her silver eyes. "My cousin was stationed on Verdant Hope," she said quietly. "We lost contact 3 days ago. Do you think anyone escaped?" Veltar did not answer. They all knew what happened when the Devourers reached a world. The massive machines surrounded each planet completely, making escape impossible. There were never any survivors, never any distress calls after the consumption began. Entire civilizations simply vanished as if they had never existed. In the Coalition Council chambers, emergency meetings ran day and night. The 7 species that had lived in harmony for thousands of years now faced a crisis that tested every principle they believed in. Speaker Thane looked older each day, his silver hair becoming white with worry. "Our defense fleets report the same result every time," announced Captain Zara, her voice hollow with defeat. "The Devourers ignore our weapons completely. Our most powerful plasma cannons cannot even scratch their hulls. And when we try to get close, they simply absorb our ships like they absorb everything else." The crystalline Vorth representative, Minister Kiravel, shimmered as she spoke. Her people thought in ways others could barely understand, seeing patterns and possibilities that escaped normal minds. "We are fighting this war wrong," she said, her voice like chiming bells. "We think of them as an enemy to defeat. But they are more like a force of nature. You cannot fight a hurricane or negotiate with an earthquake." Old General Thok of the Rockskin Thek species stood slowly. His people were known for their patience and deep thinking. "In all our history, we have faced problems through cooperation and understanding. But these machines do not want to cooperate. They do not communicate. They only consume." The chamber fell silent as everyone considered his words. Outside the Crystal Dome, more refugee ships arrived every hour. The Coalition's most beautiful worlds were now empty spaces filled with hungry machines. Dr. Yenna, the chief scientist from the energy being Lumine race, flickered into visibility. "I have been studying the patterns of their attacks," she said, her voice like static electricity. "They are not random. The Devourers always move toward the most populated systems next. They can somehow detect where life is strongest." This news sent a chill through the council. If the machines could sense living beings, then nowhere in Coalition space was truly safe. Even if they fled to the galaxy's edge, the Devourers would eventually find them. Minister Kiravel began to glow brighter as her crystalline mind worked on a new idea. "There is one option we have not considered," she said slowly. "We could send a message. Not to the machines, but to someone else." Speaker Thane looked confused. "Who would we contact? We know of no other advanced civilizations in this part of the galaxy." "That is exactly my point," Kiravel replied. "We have been content to live in our small corner of space for 3,000 years. But the galaxy is vast. Somewhere out there, other species might exist. Perhaps some who have faced threats like this before." The idea seemed crazy to most of the council members. The Coalition had never detected any signs of other spacefaring civilizations. Their radio telescopes had listened for signals for centuries without success. Most scientists believed they were alone in the galaxy. But as another report came in of the Devourers consuming the industrial world of Iron Peak, Desperation began to overcome scientific doubt. Captain Zara spoke what everyone was thinking. Even if there are others out there, why would they help us? What could we offer them that would make them risk their lives for strangers? Minister Kiravel's crystalline body pulsed with soft light. We offer them the same thing we would want if our positions were reversed, the chance to stop this plague before it reaches their worlds. The Devourers will not stop with us. They will consume everything they can find. The debate continued for hours, but as more refugee ships arrived and more worlds fell silent, the choice became clear. The coalition would send their message into space, a desperate plea for help from any civilization that might be listening. It was their last hope before the darkness consumed them all. The message reached Earth on a Tuesday morning when most people were drinking their coffee and checking the news. In the Sol Defense Command Center, Lieutenant Harren was monitoring the deep space communication array when her computer started beeping with unusual signals. At first, she thought it was just space noise, the kind of random radio waves that came from distant stars. But this was different. The signal had patterns, mathematical sequences that no natural phenomenon could create. Harren called her supervisor, Commander Ji Woo, who hurried over to look at the data streaming across the screens. "This is not random," Ji Woo said, her dark eyes studying the strange symbols and numbers. "Someone is trying to talk to us." Within hours, the world's best scientists were working to decode the alien message. Dr. Kim Minute-ho, Earth's leading expert in theoretical physics, led the translation team. He had spent his whole career dreaming of first contact with alien life, but he never imagined it would come as a desperate cry for help. The translation took 3 days. When they finally understood what the message said, the room fell silent. The aliens called themselves the Keth Mori Coalition. They had been peaceful for thousands of years, but now they faced complete destruction. Mechanical invaders called Devourers were consuming their worlds one by one, turning entire planets into more machines. "They are asking for military help," Minute-ho explained to the Emergency Council in Seoul. "But look at this data they sent." He pointed to detailed battle reports showing how the aliens' weapons had no effect on the enemy. "Their idea of warfare is completely different from ours. They have never faced anything like this." President Park Ji-soo studied the alien tactical data with growing concern. The Devourers were unlike any enemy humanity had ever fought. They were not biological creatures with weaknesses and needs. They were pure machines that consumed everything in their path to make more of themselves. "How long before they finish with these coalition worlds?" she asked. "Based on their current rate of consumption, perhaps 6 months, Minute-ho replied. "But then they will need new targets. And Earth is in the same general direction as their advance." The room erupted in worried discussions. Some council members wanted to ignore the alien message completely. Why risk human lives for strangers they had never met? Others argued that helping the coalition was really about protecting Earth. If these Devourers were not stopped, they would eventually reach human space. Admiral Lee Jun sat quietly in the corner, listening to the debates. He was old enough to remember the Martian Independence War, when human colonies had fought each other with terrible weapons. He had also commanded ships during the Europa Rebellion, where entire fleets had been destroyed in brutal combat. Unlike the politicians, he understood what real warfare looked like. "We have 2 advantages," Admiral Lee finally said, standing up slowly. "First, we are not peaceful. Humanity has been fighting wars for our entire history. We know how to build weapons that kill efficiently. Second, we are not trying to save our pretty worlds and art collections. We are fighting for our lives." The Admiral walked to the holographic display showing the alien battlefields. "Look at how these coalition ships fight. They stay in perfect formations. They follow rules. They try not to damage the planets they are defending. This is not how you fight a war." He pointed to images of human warships under construction in Earth's orbital shipyards. "Our ships are ugly. They are covered in armor and weapons. We build them to survive damage and deal death. This is what those machines have never faced before." President Park looked around the room at her advisors. Earth had just achieved faster-than-light travel 6 months ago. Their first ships were still being tested. Sending them into battle against unknown enemies seemed like madness. But as she studied the alien data, she began to understand what Admiral Lee meant. The coalition fought like they were playing a game with rules. Humanity fought like their lives depended on winning, because they usually did. "How many ships can we send?" she asked. 12 vessels, Admiral Lee replied. "Our newest and best. Each one carries weapons that these peaceful aliens have probably never imagined. Nuclear missiles, kinetic railguns, plasma torpedoes designed to crack asteroid fortresses." The decision was not easy. Most of Earth's leaders wanted to send diplomats first, to try negotiating with the Devourers. But the alien message made it clear that the machines did not communicate. They only consumed. In the end, Admiral Lee got permission to launch a small rescue mission. Officially, they were going to study the situation and offer humanitarian aid. Unofficially, everyone knew they were going to war. Commander Minute-Ho volunteered to lead the mission. His background was in physics, but he had also served in the asteroid mining conflicts where pirates attacked cargo ships. He understood that sometimes violence was the only language that worked. As the human fleet prepared to jump to Coalition space, Minute-Ho looked at the crew rosters. These were veterans of humanity's worst conflicts, soldiers who had survived battles where surrender meant death. They carried weapons designed by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. The aliens had sent their message hoping someone peaceful might help them. Instead, they were about to meet the most violent species in the galaxy. And for the first time since the Devourers appeared, that might be exactly what they needed. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sanctuary Prime system. Commander Minute-Ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul's Hammer, watching the battle displays with growing amazement. The space around the Coalition's capital world was filled with the largest ships he had ever seen. The Devourer constructs looked like moving mountains made of dark metal. Each one was the size of a small moon, covered in thousands of energy collectors that glowed like evil eyes. They moved in perfect geometric patterns, surrounding Sanctuary Prime in a slowly tightening ring. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the Coalition Defense Fleet," reported Lieutenant Park Sujin from the communication station. Her voice was tight with worry as she listened to the alien voices. "They are asking us to stay back. They say their situation is hopeless." Minute-Ho studied the tactical display showing both fleets. The Coalition ships were beautiful, smooth, graceful vessels that looked more like works of art than weapons of war. They hung in space like silver birds, firing bright energy beams at the Devourers. The beams struck the mechanical giants and simply disappeared, absorbed without causing any visible damage. "How long have they been fighting like this?" Minute-Ho asked. "According to their reports, sir, 14 hours, replied his tactical officer, Lieutenant Cho Ha-won. "They have lost 37 ships, but have not damaged a single Devourer." Minute-Ho nodded grimly. The Coalition was fighting a war they could not win because they did not understand what war really meant. Their weapons were designed to disable enemies, not destroy them. Their tactics focused on protecting their beautiful worlds, not on killing their attackers. "All ships, this is Soul's Hammer," Minute-Ho announced on the fleet communication channel. "We are going to show these machines what human warfare looks like. Target the largest construct and prepare for ramming speed." The human fleet moved forward in a formation that would have horrified Coalition military scholars. The ships spread out randomly, each captain choosing his own approach path. There was no attempt to maintain pretty formations or follow traditional battle protocols. They advanced like a pack of wolves hunting a much larger prey. Commander Ji-woo, captain of the destroyer Busan's Fury, was the first to engage. Her ship was a third the size of the smallest Coalition vessel, but it bristled with weapons that had been designed for the brutal asteroid mining wars. As she approached the massive Devourer construct, she did something no Coalition captain had ever attempted. She aimed directly for the machine's center and accelerated to maximum speed. "Ji-woo, what are you doing?" Minute-Ho asked over the communication channel. "Something these machines have never seen before," she replied. "They are used to enemies who try to preserve their ships. Let me show them what happens when humans do not care about going home." The Busan's Fury struck the Devourer construct at nearly 1/10 the speed of light. The impact should have destroyed both vessels instantly. Instead, something unexpected happened. The human ship's heavily armored nose punched through the construct's outer hull like a bullet through paper. For the first time since the war began, a Devourer was damaged. But Ji-woo was not finished. As her ship penetrated deep into the mechanical giant, she activated the emergency reactor overload. The nuclear explosion that followed lit up space like a new star, tearing a massive hole in the construct's side. The Devourer survived, but it was wounded. For the first time in their advance across the galaxy, the machines faced an enemy that fought with complete disregard for their own survival. Lieutenant Cho Ha-won watched her sensors in amazement. "Sir, the construct is showing structural damage. Its energy absorption rate has dropped by 30%. Minute-Ho smiled grimly. "All ships, you saw what Busan's Fury accomplished. These machines can be hurt. Target their wounds and keep hitting the same spots." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded military history. The human ships attacked with a fury that seemed insane to the watching coalition forces. Captain Lee Daeun flew her cruiser through a gap in the construct's defenses and began firing armor-piercing missiles directly into its interior. When her weapons ran out, she rammed her ship into the machine's power core. The Devourers tried to adapt to these new tactics, but they had been programmed to fight rational enemies who valued their own lives. They could not understand warriors who treated their ships as expendable weapons. Commander Veltar, watching from the Coalition flagship, could barely believe what he was seeing. "These humans fight like they are already dead," he whispered to his crew. "They throw away their lives as if they mean nothing." But he was wrong. The human crews did not think their lives meant nothing. They understood something the peaceful coalition had never learned. Sometimes the only way to save what you love is to be willing to die for it. As the battle continued, more human ships made suicide runs against the Devourers. Each attack damaged the constructs a little more. The machines began to show signs of confusion, their perfect formations breaking apart as they tried to respond to enemies who refused to follow the rules of warfare. When the space around Sanctuary Prime finally grew quiet, 3 of the massive Devourer constructs had been destroyed or crippled. The human fleet was gone, but they had accomplished something the Coalition thought impossible. They had made the machines bleed. For the first time since the invasion began, the Coalition had hope. 3 years had passed since the first human ships arrived at Sanctuary Prime. The war that followed changed both species in ways no one could have predicted. The peaceful Coalition learned to fight with deadly precision, while humanity discovered there were things in the universe worth protecting beyond their own survival. Admiral Minute stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Ancient's Revenge, looking at the mixed fleet assembled around him. Coalition ships now bristled with human-designed weapons, their beautiful hulls scarred by countless battles. Human vessels had been rebuilt with alien shield technology and faster engines. The two species had learned to combine their strengths into something more powerful than either could achieve alone. Lieutenant Commander Park Sejin, now his second-in-command, studied the tactical displays showing their target. The Devourer Nexus hung in space like a metallic cancer, a massive construct built from the remains of dozens of consumed worlds. It was the size of Earth's moon, covered in countless weapon ports and energy collectors. "Intelligence reports this is their main construction facility," Sujin reported. "Every new Devourer unit in this galaxy has been built inside that thing. If we can destroy it, we cut off their ability to replace their losses." Minute nodded grimly. The war had been brutal beyond imagination. Earth itself had been attacked twice, saved only by combined coalition human defense fleets. Mars had been partially consumed before the enemy was driven off. Billions had died on both sides, but slowly, they had begun to win. Commander Veltar's image appeared on the communication screen. The aquatic alien's face showed the stress of 3 years of constant warfare. "Admiral Minute, our scout ships report the Nexus is heavily defended. At least 50 Devourer constructs protect the facility. How many ships do we have for the assault?" Minute asked. 200 coalition vessels and 78 human ships, replied Captain Lee Daeun from her position aboard the Soul's Pride. She was one of the few human commanders who had survived since the early battles. "But the enemy has home field advantage. They can manufacture new defenders faster than we can destroy them." The plan they had developed was desperate, even by human standards. A small strike force would penetrate the Nexus's outer defenses while the main fleet kept the Devourer Guardians busy. Once inside, they would detonate a specially designed weapon in the facility's core, a combined human coalition device that would cause the entire structure to collapse into itself. Minute looked around at his bridge crew. These were veterans who had seen friends die in every major battle of the war. Lieutenant Park Harin had lost her brother during the defense of Europa. Ensign Cho Minute-jun had watched his home colony on Kepler 7 get consumed by the machines. They all knew this mission was likely to be their last. "All ships, this is Admiral Minute, he announced to the combined fleet. "Today we end this war. The enemy has taken our worlds, killed our families, and forced us to become something we never wanted to be. But they made one mistake: they brought humans and the coalition together. They created an alliance of warriors and thinkers that they cannot defeat." The battle began with the fury of a solar storm. Human ships charged directly at the Devourer lines while coalition vessels provided covering fire with their precise energy weapons. The space around the Nexus lit up with explosions as hundreds of ships fought in the largest battle since the war began. Captain Veltar led a squadron of modified coalition cruisers through a gap in the enemy defenses. His ships had been rebuilt with human armor and weapons, turning them into deadly hybrids that combined alien technology with human aggression. "Strike team, follow me," Minute commanded as he guided his small group of ships toward the Nexus's main entrance. The massive facility's outer hull was covered in automated defense systems, but the main fleet was keeping most of the Devourer Guardians busy. Lieutenant Commander Sujin watched her displays as they penetrated deeper into the construct. "Sir, we are inside the manufacturing section. I can see construction bays building new Devourer units. This place is enormous." The interior of the Nexus was like a mechanical city. Automated factories stretched for kilometers in every direction, building new constructs from the raw materials of consumed worlds. Minute could see the remains of coalition cities embedded in the walls, a reminder of everything they were fighting to avenge. "Target the core reactor," Minute ordered. "All ships, on the collapse device." The weapon they carried was humanity's most destructive creation combined with coalition scientific precision. When detonated, it would create a gravitational anomaly that would cause the entire Nexus to fold in on itself, taking every Devourer unit inside with it. As they approached the core, the facility's defenses finally responded. Automated weapons began firing at the human ships, and new Devourer constructs poured out of the manufacturing bays. The strike team fought their way forward, losing ships with every kilometer they advanced. "Deploying the device now," reported Lieutenant Park Harron from the weapons station. 30 seconds to detonation. "All ships, emergency jump to minimum safe distance," Minute commanded. But even as he gave the order, he knew some of them would not make it out in time. The collapsed device detonated in a flash of impossible light. Space itself seemed to scream as the Nexus folded inward, taking millions of Devourer units with it. When the light faded, the mechanical plague that had threatened the galaxy was finally ended. The war was over, and both species had survived. But they were no longer the same peoples who had first met in the darkness of space 3 years ago.